Hi, my name is Naomi Chakraborty, and today I'll be talking about the integrative model. But before we get into that, it is very important to talk about what the classic theories were, contemporary theories, and how we are coming to this integrative model right now. So we recognize like the developmental stages of Piaget, what he was proposing, where children construct knowledge by coordinating experience with their existing schemas. So there are some modern theories that do build on that same idea of active construction, but they take it in different directions. For example, Alison Gopnik's theory suggests that children learn like little scientists by testing out different hypotheses. So we have theory, we have core knowledge that we come with certain types of knowledge that infants are like they have specialized systems for reasoning about different people and objects that they come across. And then we have the dynamic systems theorists, which emphasize that development emerges from real-time interactions between their like body and the environment instead of like the prefixed and preset stages. Each of these theories expanded how we are able to think about and develop, but there's still certain restrictions and limitations on it, right? One theory thinks of it like this, another theory thinks of it like this, but that's where the integrative model becomes really important, because it makes us understand that children's development isn't really just shaped by like one thing, but multiple things. So it could be shaped by race, ethnicity, social position, discrimination, and cultural practices. And this was introduced by García Coll and her colleagues back in 1996. So apart from the classic theories like Piaget's fixed sequence or stages or Erikson's psychosocial conflict with the issues, like the issue was that all of this, like they had like universal like standards for development, and it ended up treating it like that. And that was an issue because it didn't consider and incorporate a lot of individuals. So what the interactive model actually says is that children in minority groups in the US grow up under like a lot of social conditions that the classic theories never really accounted for. Things like, as I mentioned before, racism, segregation, and different opportunities weren't just like issues just on the side. They were actually shaping children's day-to-day environments in ways that fundamentally influence development. One of the main reasons in the model is social position. A child's race, ethnicity, and like all these things that I've been mentioning, it affects the opportunities that they get, how people treat them, the settings that they're able to get into. And from those conditions, the families that children grow up in, the families develop what the model calls something like the adaptive culture, the values, which is like the values and practices that these families are intertwined with to help cope with the environment that they're in. So the purpose of the model, the integrative model, wasn't to really try to like take out or replace these classic theories, but it's more so trying to like work within them to show that you can't just like choose one like theory and one way of development as like it being the chosen path or anything like that. It's trying to show, to understand development within the different domains. So children growing up with all these different types of contexts forces like to have certain types of barriers, certain types of strengths that a lot of these older theories just didn't build into their explanations. Now, so that was in 1996, and in 2018, about 20 years later, we have Perez Brenda and colleagues reviewing how researchers have actually used the model. So in their 2018 article, it pointed out that the integrative model did push developmental psychology away from deficit thinking about why aren't like minority children just acting this type of way. Why aren't they performing the so-called norm or this universal standard that they're supposed to be acting on or supposed to be relating to? Researchers started focusing more on the cultural resources that families like to draw on. So it shows that within the model, they had something called within group diversity. And sometimes we talk about like Latino youth or African American adolescents as if they're just like one category. Like all the minorities are, and their issues and the development and like the trends and everything are put into like one category. But their experiences are very different depending on the neighborhood they're in, depending on how much money they got, what their values are, why their values are what they are, discrimination. And a lot of these things come up in different ways in different families. In other words, the integrative model did help researchers stop like looking at cultural groups as one and looking at the different things that are happening within them. So from that, two of the authors that were incorporated in the 2018 article did a study on decision making in Mexican origin families. They looked at how mothers and fathers make decisions, like even just making decisions, right, within their Mexican origin families. And so the model guided how they thought about the influences on autonomy, things like how much money, the socioeconomic status, cultural values, and the quality of their family relationships. When looking at their findings, it showed that these contextual factors actually did matter. For example, within the same like people group, right? Families with higher socioeconomic status tended to have more joint family making decisions. For example, the children are involved. Mom and dad, everybody's involved, joint decision making families. While families with stronger traditional gender roles believe that the parents should only be making the decisions. So without these integrative models, these patterns may have been interpreted as like, just personal preferences as that. So like, maybe they just felt like it or this family just wanted to do it this way. But the model actually showed and allowed the authors to understand these practices as emerging from family, social position, and adaptive cultural values. Exactly what the original 1996 author was trying to do. Now, this other article is a little bit more of a recent article, right? But it kind of talks about the Latino youth as well. And it uses the same model. They examine whether family ethnic socialization was able to predict students' academic engagement and whether that relationship worked through ethnic racial identity. So the model, this further kind of shows that this model matters a lot because not only is it affecting the decisions the family is making, but also just in academics as well.